This is lesson 3.3, and today we're going to study rate of change and slope. Okay, by way of definition, write this down. The rate of change equals the change in y over the change in x. The rate of change in an equation equals the change in y from point to point divided by or over the change in the x. Okay, you need to know that a linear function will always have a constant rate of change. That's why it forms a straight line, because there's a constant rate of change. A constant rate of change is when the rate is the same between any set of points. All right, let's look at these two tables. These two tables are a table of a function. And what we want to do is determine whether or not these are linear functions. And we'll know whether or not they're linear if they have a constant rate of change. So let's look at how the x changes from point to point to point. So the rate of change each time is +1. And then let's look at how the y changes from point to point to point. And as you look at that, you'll notice that the rate of change here is +3. Remembering the definition of rate of change, it's the change in y over the change in x. So we can say that the constant rate of change is 3/1. That would be the constant rate of change. So can we determine whether or not this is a linear function? The answer is yes, because the constant rate of change of 3/1 from point to point. Okay, try number 2 on your own. You're going to determine whether it is a linear function and determine the rate of change. Pause the video now. Okay, number 2 is also a linear function, and its rate of change is -2/1. Always express the rate of change in lowest terms. Okay, let's continue. Rate of change is interchangeable with the term slope, and we will study slope extensively in this course. Let me define what slope is. Slope describes the steepness of a line. It's the measure of how steep a line is. It is measured as the ratio or the comparison of the rise to the run. So write this down. Slope equals rise over run. Rise over run. Rise is the vertical change. Run is the horizontal change. Just like we just looked at rate of change, the vertical change is the change in y, and the horizontal change is the change in x. Please note, I wrote it down for you. Slope is always expressed in lowest terms. Always. You always reduce that ratio and you express slope in lowest terms. Okay, so just as far as generalities concerning slope, here's what you need to know. A line that rises from left to right has a positive slope. If that line is going up from left to right, you know the slope is a positive number. On the other hand, if your line goes down from left to right, then your slope is negative. Your slope is negative. A line that has a zero slope has absolutely no rise. Zero rise. It's a horizontal line. Zero rise. So its slope is 0. And then a slope that has an a line that has an undefined slope would be a vertical line, because in this case there is no run. Okay? Let me go back and take a look at this. The zero slope, the horizontal line, is going to be 0 rise over a number. And 0 divided by anything equals 0. Whereas your undefined slope is the rise over 0, and we know that we can never have 0 in the denominator. We can never divide by 0, so we call it undefined. It's impossible to do. We can't define it. Okay? So again, if your line goes up from left to right, it's positive. The slope is positive. If your line goes down from left to right, your slope is negative. If you have a horizontal slope that has no rise at all, your slope is 0. And if you have a vertical line that has absolutely no run, the slope is undefined. Let's continue. Okay, so it's very, very simple, given the graph of an equation, to determine the slope of the line. Let me go ahead and write down the coordinate pairs that I've pictured here. I have -2, 0 is one point, and the other point is at 1, 4. Okay, just to remind you of the definition of slope. Slope equals rise over run. Slope equals the change in y, the y-axis runs up and down, divided by the run, or the horizontal change. Alright, so if you put your pencil on -2, 0, how many units do I rise to get to the next point on the line? Well, I'd have to rise +4. And then how many units will I run to get to that point? It's +3, since I'm going to the right. Going up on the y is positive, moving to the right on the x is positive. So I can say that the slope of this line is rise over run, 4/3. And I'll always check to make sure that it's in lowest terms. Okay, number 2, figure out the slope on your own. Remember that slope equals rise over run. So number your 2 points, and then you're just going to count on your graph paper from one point to the next, rise divided by run. I'm going to pause the video now, come back and check your answer. Okay, so the slope of this line is -9/4. You would never change that to a mixed number. I know it looks like an improper fraction to you, but remember, it's not a fraction, it's a ratio, and we're just comparing the rise to the run. All right? The way that I always like to go from point to point is from left to right. So I chose this point to go first. So I went down 9 and to the right 4. Okay, so -9, +4. Okay, so sometimes you're not given a function table to find the rate of change or the slope of a line. Sometimes you're not given the picture of a graph. Okay? Sometimes all you're given are two coordinates. So when you are given two coordinates and you're asked to find the slope of the line, you may use the slope formula. Please write it down. Here is your slope formula. M represents slope. M equals y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. We're going to find the change in y over the change in x. Okay? So let me just color code this a little bit for you. I will place pink on point number 1 and blue on point number 2. Just going to remind you real quick, this is x, this is y, this is x, that's y. Okay, so for number 5, let's go ahead and substitute into my formula. Slope equals y for point 2, which is blue, y is 8, minus y1, which is the pink one, that's 6, over x2, which is 4, minus x1, which is 3. Now let's figure that out. 8 minus 6 is 2. 4 minus 3 is 1. And we can say that the slope of this line is 2. Okay? All right, let's go ahead and do number 6. Follow along with me. The slope of the line, as I go ahead and use the slope formula, y2 is negative 2 minus y1, which is negative 2, over x2, which is 0, minus x1, which is negative 4. Okay, let's remember our integer rules. We are subtracting these integers, so we'll always add the opposite. Negative 2 plus positive 2 is 0. And 0 plus positive 4 is 4. So the slope of this line is 0. What we know is that that's a horizontal line. Okay, I'm going to pause the video. Go ahead and use the slope formula to find the slope of the line that has the 2 points that are stated there, 7 and 8. Pause the video now. Okay, please check. Number 7 has a slope of negative 1/2, 1 over 2. And number 8 has a slope of negative 8 over 5. Remember, we just said, even though here you come up with negative 5 in the denominator, whenever we have any kind of ratio or fraction, that negative sign's going up to the numerator. Okay, one more thing to finish up this video. Look at number 9 and write it down, please. The slope given is 5 over 6. And they give us 2 coordinates, but we're missing y2. We're missing one of the coordinates on one of the ordered pairs. So what we're going to do is we're going to write the equation that uses the slope formula, and then we're going to solve. So here's the slope formula. M equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, right? So let's plug into it. M is 5 over 6 equals y2 is r minus y1, which is 2, over x2, which is negative 7, minus x1, which is 5. Let's simplify. 5/6 equals r minus 2 over negative 12. Okay. All right, so I've run out of room there, but I'm going to go ahead and continue this problem up here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to treat this as a proportion, and I'm going to write an equation that I can solve. Remember that when you have a proportion, one ratio equal to another ratio, we can solve using cross products. So let's multiply. 5 times negative 12 is negative 60 equals 6 times r minus 2. So I'll write it this way, 6 times r minus 2. All right, so to solve, I first have to distribute. So negative 60 equals 6r minus 12. We'll add 12 on both sides. Negative 48 equals 6r. We'll divide by 6 on both sides, so negative 8 equals r. Okay? All right, so a little independent practice here. Here we go. For numbers 1, 5, and 9, you're going to find the slope of the line that passes through the pair of points. So that means you're going to use the slope formula. M equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay? And then find the value of r so that the line passes through the pair of points and has the given slope. So you're going to set up your slope formula and solve using cross products for number 10 and for number 14. Okay, work on those. We will continue working with slope tomorrow. God bless you. Have a great night.